Father Jerry has been a friend of mine for a very long time. And Father Jerry is 85 years old, and for most of his life, he has wrestled with alcoholism and recovery. And through these years, he has wrestled with many resentments, with a sea of regrets, many failed parish assignments in the midst of his alcoholism, broken vows, to say the least, as well as broken relationships. However, now, 85 years old, been in recovery for some period of time, he has learned to make some amends. He's forgiven. And in many ways, through recovery, he has learned to love again. Kind of a fresh start, if you will. A few years back, he told me and revealed to me that, unfortunately, even in the midst of recovery, he's still wrestling with some things. And he said he still holds on to one resentment and one regret. And I was curious. I said, Jerry, what do you resent? It broke my heart. I resent God, he said. I cannot believe that he can forgive and love all that I've done. I can't believe that he can forgive and love a drunk like me. Not much I could say. I said, well, what's your regret? And he said, I regret that I've never had the chance in all my 85 years to take a trip to my favorite country and Western stars amusement park, Dollywood, Dolly Parton in Tennessee. Against all good judgments, I thought, well, I can do something to check this off his regret list or his bucket list. So I offered to take 85-year-old Father Jerry, now retired, from upstate New York all the way to Dollywood in Tennessee. It was agonizing. All the way there, because I didn't know too much about Dolly Parton. We played Dolly music all the way to Tennessee from upstate New York. So, in quotes, I could learn the magic of Dolly Parton. If I had to hear working 9 to 5 one more time on my way to Tennessee, I thought I was going to lose it. Well, we finally arrived in Dollywood. It is a quite an amazing place. If you've never been, you should put that on your bucket list as well. And as fate would have it, that afternoon when we arrived, Dolly Parton was in the amusement park doing a meet and greet and signing autographs in this huge auditorium. So immediately we got in line. It took 3 hours to see Dolly Parton. 3 hours. I don't know if I would have waited that long for Jesus. 3 hours. Well, we finally get there. There Jerry is with his pop idol, his country and music Western singer. He's the biggest fan, and there she is right there in front of him. And he becomes tongue-tied, nervous. He basically just kind of shrank before her eyes. And let me tell you, Dolly Parton looks like she's 19 years old. I don't know how she does it. And just then, Jerry looked at his favorite person in the world who has really helped him in his recovery. Her music has brought him to a sense of peace. And all he could say, and reminding her of her age as well, "You know, Dolly, I have loved you for 60 years. That's all he could say. "I have loved you for 60 years. Well, just then, Dolly Parton looked up at both of us. And she just put on this big old smile and said, "Well, honey, don't stop now. Honey, don't stop now. Don't stop loving now." As we were leaving the auditorium, Jerry said, "I think God was trying to tell me something." I said, "Through Dolly Parton?" And he goes, "Yes. I heard Jesus say in those words that God never stopped forgiving. He never stopped loving an old alcoholic like myself." There's a deep sense of freedom at that very moment for Jerry. Indeed, the raising of Lazarus. Jesus, in today's gospel, Jesus calling out Lazarus from the darkness, from that tomb, and from that death, first and foremost reveals that nothing, not even death, can stop God from loving and forgiving us. There's also another part of this story that is very important, that's in the heart of this gospel of the raising of Lazarus. And it is an all too familiar cry that many of us can relate to. Martha cries out, like many of us, and says, "Hey, Jesus, if you would have been here, my brother Lazarus would not have died." We have often said in our life, "Hey, God, if you were here, my spouse wouldn't have been sick. I wouldn't have experienced this loss, this dread." That all too familiar cry that says, "Where are you, God?" Maybe some of us voice that during the midst of this pandemic and all the unrest that we have encountered in these past years. Where is God? And at that moment, Martha, like many of us, were really voicing to God a term that has come out of the pandemic. It's called life tired. We're just kind of tired of it all. It's called life tired. That the sadness of life, of loss, of death, of resentment and regrets, they have hold on us. And we carry this sadness, it seems, everywhere and at all times. And so we say and we cry out like Martha, "Where are you, Jesus?" in the midst of all this life tired. And that's the good news in today's gospel. Jesus is not only defeating death, revealing that he's going to defeat death in this story of the raising of Lazarus, but he's also come to defeat the sadness and that defeat that we often are held by in life. He's come to defeat that as well, to bring victory to our lives. The raising of Lazarus, the force of God's love and forgiveness, it really reveals the glory of God liberating us from the stench and the force and the power of death. That the raising of Lazarus in today's gospel is the force of God's love that can roll away, can push away any stone from Lazarus, Jesus' tomb. It can dig us up out of our own graves, whatever grave we have dug ourselves into. That force of God's love and forgiveness can roll away the boulder from our tombs, where we feel defeated, where we feel lost. The raising of Lazarus and the power of God's love and forgiveness, it unties us, it frees us from those resentments, those regrets. It frees us from the loss and the fear and the power that death has upon us. And thus, as we begin to move towards resurrection and the death of Jesus Christ, that Paschal mystery, it is in that mystery that we are lifted, our life is lifted, unbound by that fear of death and loss and life tired. I feel like I need to address this because there's so many of our families affected by this past week. And it is a loss, and we can get defeated by it. You're probably aware that the Congregation of Faith has set forth some instructions on dealing with gay and lesbian unions, and the blessing of gay and lesbian unions. And I just first want to apologize to our families, especially to our gay and lesbian families, that it's hard to read this document. However, to be fair, the Congregation of Faith sends out these instructions. These are not final statements, but they're really invited to engage the wider theological as well as the bishops in the community to a discussion and dialogue on this issue. And already the Belgian bishops and a number of other theologians are arguing with the statement already, and about some weakness in the argument and some theological issues, especially surrounding the area of sin. So that's already begun. So in some ways, it's good to get this out there, right? Get the discussion started. But meanwhile, the way the argument was framed, I believe it has brought some hurt and some difficult feelings to our families. And I apologize for that. However, the document did reiterate the importance of accompanying our gay and lesbian brothers and sisters, also accompanying those relationships that even the document said can be good. And so the church needs to continue to accompany families as well. Now, this is my personal spin on this. This will probably get me in Idaho next week, in a parish in Idaho, with 20 families. But I need to say it. You know, the church permits me to bless naval ships with nuclear warheads on it. But somehow I can't bless a good relationship, a holy one, a family that builds and strengthens our community and our church. Just saying. We need to continue the discussion and the dialogue that this document encourages. And we also have to be reminded, as in today's gospel, that God is not done loving us yet, not even now. But God's love and forgiveness continues to call us out, to be untied, to be free, to be unbound by the fear of death and loss. And that's for all of us, for everyone. And to know that together, as a community, we can continue to accompany everyone to that freedom, and to cast that fear of death and loss, resentment, regret. Set it aside and live in that great and wonder of the Paschal mystery.